Today is February 18th, 2021, and just earlier today, two major events talked about. One of these events I'll be talking about in today's video, and the other topic I might make a video on, but I probably won't. But one of the things that happened earlier today had to do with the GameStop Robinhood controversy that took place at the end of January, so around 3 weeks ago at this point. If you don't know what happened 3 weeks ago, basically there was a pretty large increase in the stock price, in the share price of GME, which is just the GameStop stock. And because of this sharp increase, and because of everything that was going on with the GME stock, Robinhood basically had to limit the amount of that stock that people who use the Robinhood app could trade. And this decision was met with a lot of backlash. A lot of people did not like that they put limitations into place in terms of how much of the GME stock could be traded. So because of everything that happened a few weeks ago involving GME and Robinhood, there was a congressional hearing earlier today that tried to address that, in which the CEO of Robinhood basically had to testify for Congress. I'm really not aware of many of the details of the congressional hearing that took place earlier today. I really don't know much about what all was discussed in that congressional hearing, and that's not the main topic of this video. What I was really focusing on today, and what I'm focusing on in this video, is another thing that happened earlier today, and it's probably why you clicked this video, and it also has to do with what's currently on screen. But earlier today, NASA's Perseverance rover successfully landed on Mars. So this was a rover launched by NASA several months ago. It was launched back in July, at the end of July. So the initial launch date was July 30th, 2020, so almost 7 months ago at this point. That's how long it takes for a spacecraft to get from Earth to Mars. It takes around 7 months. So this rover spent 7 months traveling from Earth to Mars, and just earlier today, it finally landed on the planet after its almost 300 million mile journey from Earth. So this rover landed on Mars just before 4 p.m. Eastern Time, and the interesting thing is that there's actually a Twitter account dedicated to this rover, and on that Twitter account, there's a post that includes a picture that the Mars rover took on the surface of Mars. So I thought that was pretty interesting, the fact that there's a Twitter account dedicated to the Mars rover that actually includes a picture of the planet. Unfortunately, the picture's only in black and white. I guess it wasn't really possible for them to get a colored picture of the planet, but hey, that's still pretty interesting, the fact that they're even able to get a picture of the surface of the planet, and they were able to get this picture right after the rover first landed on the planet. So, like I said, this journey took 7 months almost for this rover. It started on July 30th. That's when the initial launch date was, July 30th, 2020. And for the past 7 months, it's just been traveling through space from Earth, the planet that we all live on, to Mars, the planet that literally nobody lives on. I find it crazy to think about how far away Mars really is, because if you compare it to the moon only takes a few days to travel to from Earth. Like back in 1969 when Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins initially traveled from Earth to the moon, that journey only took a few days. It was around a week or so, but compare a week to 6 to 7 months, that's over 10 times longer of a journey from Earth to Mars compared to from Earth to the moon. In fact, that's almost 30 times as long. You compare 1 week to like 25 weeks, that's 25 times longer, 25 times more time involved in the journey from Earth to Mars compared to the journey from Earth to the moon. And that's because the moon is only around a quarter of a million miles away from Earth, but this Mars rover had to take a 300 million mile journey in order to go to the planet from Earth. So it turns out that planet Mars is only around 127 million miles away from planet Earth, but for various reasons, the rover had to travel a lot more than just 127 million miles in its 6 to 7 month long journey from Earth to Mars. Like I said earlier, the total journey was nearly 300 million miles long for this rover, even though the planet's only 127 million miles away. I guess if the rover traveled like just in a straight line from Earth to Mars, it would take 127 million miles, but I assume that the path wasn't really the quickest path from Earth to Mars. For whatever reason, they had to take a longer path. At this point, it's been over 50 years since we first had people step on the moon. The first moon landing was in 1969. Neil Armstrong was the first person to walk on the moon, and then Buzz Aldrin shortly after became the second person to walk on the moon. And in total, only 12 people ever have actually stepped on the moon. Out of the billions of people that have lived on this planet, only 12 of them have ever even went to the moon. And at this point in time, even 52 years at this point, almost 52 years after the initial moon landing, we've still never had a person travel to Mars and step on the surface of Mars. Now the question is, how much longer until that happens? Well, a lot of people predict that sometime in the 2030s, that's when we will first have humans reach the surface of Mars. Up until this point, we've never had a single human being reach Mars' surface for many reasons. Traveling to Mars is much, much more difficult than just traveling to the moon. Like I said earlier, the moon is only around a quarter of a million miles away from Earth, while Mars is over 100 million miles away from planet Earth. The moon only takes around a week to travel to, but Mars takes several months to travel to. You also have to consider how much harder it is to transmit information from Earth to Mars and Mars back to Earth compared to between just Earth and the moon. You have to keep in mind the speed at which information can be transmitted from the Earth to the moon or from Earth to Mars. It isn't instantaneous. Information can only travel as fast as the speed of light, and the speed of light is only finite. For example, it takes 8.5 minutes approximately for light to travel from the sun to Earth. So whenever you receive sunlight on a sunny day, that sunlight is always from 8.5 minutes in the past because the speed of light isn't infinite. It takes time for that light to travel from the sun to Earth. So whatever sunlight you receive on planet Earth, that sunlight is from 8.5 minutes in the past because that's how long it took for that light to travel from the sun to planet Earth. The light that comes from the sun is one form of light, but another form of light is radio waves, which means that the speed at which a radio message travels is equivalent to the speed of light. And because the speed of light is only finite and light can't instantaneously travel from one location to another, there is a time delay between when a message is initially sent from Earth and when it's received, either on the moon or on Mars. Because the moon is only around 250,000 miles away from Earth, it only takes a couple seconds for a radio message to be sent from Earth to the moon, but Mars is over 100 million miles away from Earth, which means that it takes several minutes for a radio message to be sent from Earth to Mars or from Mars to Earth. So that big difference in terms of the distance from planet Earth and in terms of how much harder it is for communication between Earth and Mars compared to between Earth and the moon. I think those are some of the reasons why traveling to Mars is much, much harder than traveling to the moon, but it'll be interesting to see whether or not we will be able to actually get people to land on the surface of Mars sometime in the 2030s. I would imagine it's not going to be anytime before the 2030s.